If someone had told me a routine stop would flip an empire and a badge in the same night, I'd have doubted it. Rain pounded the windshield of Officer Riley Carter's patrol car as she set up at Solstice Boulevard and Meridian Street. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and Crestmont City's neon smeared across the wet asphalt like broken promises. 3 years on the graveyard shift had made this corner familiar, a prime route for drunk drivers slipping past the main checkpoints. Riley adjusted her radio, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and settled in. At 29, she'd already earned a reputation in the LAPD as tough but fair, never backing down from a confrontation, and always, to the letter, by protocol. Her colleagues respected her, though some found her intensity intimidating. She didn't care. The badge meant something to her. It represented justice, order, and protection for those who couldn't protect themselves. The sound of screeching tires cut through the rain. Riley looked up to see a sleek black Bentley Continental GT weaving slightly as it approached the intersection. The car was moving too fast for the wet conditions, and when it took the corner, Riley could see it drift slightly into the oncoming lane before correcting. "That's it," Riley muttered, flipping on her emergency lights and pulling out behind the luxury vehicle. The Bentley's driver seemed oblivious to the patrol car behind them, continuing at an erratic pace down Solstice Boulevard. Riley followed for 2 blocks, documenting the vehicle's behavior. Failure to maintain lane position, excessive speed for conditions, and what appeared to be delayed reactions to traffic signals. Finally, Riley activated her siren. The Bentley's brake lights flashed, and the car pulled over into a well-lit parking lot outside a 24-hour diner. Riley parked behind it, noting the California license plate. Victory won. Probably some entitled rich kid, Riley thought as she grabbed her flashlight and stepped out into the rain. The cold droplets immediately soaked through her uniform shirt, but she ignored the discomfort. She had a job to do. As Riley approached the driver's side window, she could see a figure inside, a woman with long, dark hair wearing what appeared to be an expensive business suit. The window was tinted, making it difficult to see clearly, but Riley could make out the silhouette of someone fumbling with something in their lap. Riley tapped on the window with her flashlight. "LAPD, please roll down your window." The window descended slowly, revealing a woman who was clearly not what Riley had expected. Instead of a young partygoer, she found herself looking at someone closer to her own age with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that seemed more annoyed than concerned. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm Officer Carter with the Crestmont City Police Department. Do you know why I pulled you over tonight?" The woman in the car looked up at Riley with an expression that seemed to mix surprise with something else. Perhaps amusement. "I'm afraid I don't, officer. I was simply driving home from a business meeting." Riley noticed the woman's speech was clear and articulate, but there was something about her posture and the way she was gripping the steering wheel that seemed off. "Ma'am, I observed your vehicle weaving and exceeding the speed limit for these weather conditions. Have you been drinking tonight?" "Drinking?" The woman's eyebrows raised. "Officer, I can assure you that I have not been drinking. I was simply trying to get home safely in this weather." Riley studied the woman more carefully. She was undeniably beautiful with perfectly styled hair despite the late hour and expensive jewelry that caught the light from Riley's flashlight. But Riley had learned not to be swayed by appearances. Rich or poor, drunk driving was drunk driving. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. And I'd like you to step out of the vehicle for a field sobriety test." The woman's expression hardened. "I beg your pardon, officer. I think you're making a mistake. I am perfectly sober, and I was driving responsibly given the conditions." "Ma'am, that's not what I observed. Please step out of the vehicle for a moment." The two women stared at each other through the rain-streaked window. Riley could see the woman's jaw clench, and there was something in her eyes that suggested she wasn't used to being told what to do. "This is ridiculous," the woman muttered as she reached for her purse. She produced a wallet and passed over her driver's license. Under Riley's flashlight, the name read Vivian Sterling, address in Laurel Heights. The photo matched, same features, but the woman in the picture looked more composed, more in command than the one standing in the rain. "Miss Sterling, I still need you to step out for a field sobriety test," Riley said. Indignation sparked in Vivian's eyes. "Officer Carter, I'm telling you I haven't been drinking. I'm a businesswoman trying to get home after a long day, and I don't appreciate being treated like a common criminal." Riley felt heat rise under her collar. She knew this type, people who thought money or status put them beyond the rules. Ma'am, I don't care if you're the Queen of England. If I suspect DUI, I have both the authority and the duty to investigate. Now please step out of the vehicle. Vivian held Riley's gaze, weighing her options, then, with visible reluctance, opened the door and stepped into the downpour. Face to face, Riley realized Vivian was taller than she'd expected, maybe 5 feet 8 inches to her own 5 feet 6 inches. Even in the rain, Vivian carried unmistakable authority. The tailored suit screamed expensive, and she looked as if she'd walked straight out of a boardroom. This is humiliating, Vivian said, voice tight with controlled anger. If you're sober, you've got nothing to worry about, Riley replied. The test will confirm it, and you'll be on your way. Riley ran through the standard battery, horizontal gaze nystagmus, heel-to-toe walk, one-leg stand. Vivian's responses were crisp and steady, no tremor in her balance, no stumble in her steps. As the minutes ticked by, a small doubt needled at Riley. Vivian looked stone-cold sober. But pride, and procedure, kept her moving. Ma'am, I'm also going to need a breathalyzer, Riley said. Vivian's composure finally fractured. Are you serious? I just passed every test perfectly. How much more of this do you intend to put me through? It's standard procedure, ma'am. Standard procedure, Vivian echoed, voice rising. Officer Carter, do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Riley's jaw tightened. Exactly the attitude that made nights like this hard. Ma'am, I don't care who you are. The law applies to everyone equally. Vivian laughed once, humorless. The law applies equally, that's rich coming from someone clearly on a power trip. Excuse me? Riley stepped in, hand edging toward her radio. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down and cooperate. Cooperate? I've done everything you asked, despite you offering no reasonable justification for this harassment. Riley felt the tension climb, but training, and stubbornness, held her line. Ma'am, I observed your vehicle exhibiting signs of impaired driving. That gives me probable cause to investigate. Probable cause? Vivian's eyes blazed. You saw a woman driving a nice car late at night and decided she must be drunk. That's not probable cause, Officer Carter. That's profiling. The accusation hit Riley like a slap. That's not true. I don't care what kind of car you drive or what you look like. I care about public safety. Public safety? Vivian gestured around the empty parking lot. Whose safety exactly are you protecting right now? You've humiliated me, wasted both of our time, and demonstrated a complete lack of professional judgment. Riley felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment. Deep down, she was beginning to realize that Vivian might be right, but her pride wouldn't let her admit it. Ma'am, if you continue to be uncooperative, I'll have no choice but to arrest you for obstruction. Vivian stared at Riley in disbelief. Arrest me for what? For pointing out that you've made a mistake. For interfering with a police investigation. For a moment, the two women stood in the rain, staring at each other with a mixture of anger, frustration, and something else that neither could quite identify. The tension between them was palpable, electric in a way that had nothing to do with the storm overhead. Finally, Vivian reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She held it out to Riley, who took it reluctantly. Vivian Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, Vivian said, her voice now deadly calm. Perhaps you've heard of us. We employ over 50,000 people worldwide and generate billions in revenue annually. We also happen to be one of the largest contributors to police benevolent funds in this city. Riley looked down at the business card and her heart sank. Sterling Industries was indeed a major corporation, and Vivian Sterling was not just any CEO. She was one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. Riley had just humiliated one of the most influential people in Crestmont City. Riley started, but Vivian cut her off. Save it, Officer Carter. You've made your position quite clear. You don't care who I am. Remember, the law applies equally to everyone. Vivian walked back to her car, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. She paused at her door and turned back to Riley. You know what, Officer Carter? You're right about one thing. The law should apply equally to everyone. But so should respect, professionalism, and basic human decency. Perhaps you should think about that the next time you decide to humiliate someone based on your assumptions. Vivian got into her car and drove away, leaving Riley standing alone in the rain. The morning sun streamed through her window, but it did nothing to lift the dark cloud that had settled over her mood. She had barely slept, replaying the events of the previous night over and over in her mind. Her phone buzzed with a text from her partner. Detective Marco Alvarez heard you had an interesting night. Coffee at 10 o'clock. Riley sighed and typed back. Yeah, we need to talk. She showered and dressed in her civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple blue sweater, trying to wash away the memory of the rain and the humiliation she had felt when Vivian drove away. But no amount of hot water could cleanse the growing realization that she had made a serious mistake. At 10 a.m. sharp, Riley walked into the Copper Mug on Solstice Boulevard, a small coffee shop that had become her and Marco's regular meeting spot. Marco was already there, his weathered face creased with concern as he sipped his espresso. You look like hell, Marco said as Riley slumped into the chair across from him. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Riley signaled the waitress for coffee. How much do you know? Enough. Word travels fast in the department. You pulled over Vivian Sterling last night. Riley nodded miserably. I thought she was drunk. Her driving seemed erratic. And when I approached the car, she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. And I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. She was stone cold sober. Marco. I put her through a field sobriety test, threatened to arrest her, and basically treated her like a criminal because I was too proud to admit I might have made a mistake. Marco leaned back in his chair, studying Riley's face. What aren't you telling me? Riley looked up, surprised by his perceptiveness. What do you mean? I've known you for 5 years, Riley. You've made mistakes before. We all have. But I've never seen you this torn up about it. What else happened? Riley was quiet for a long moment, trying to find the words. She got under my skin, Marco. The way she looked at me, the way she challenged everything I said. I felt like she could see right through me and it made me defensive. Defensive how I escalated the situation when I should have de-escalated. She was right. I was on a power trip. And the worst part is I think part of me knew it even while it was happening. Marco nodded slowly. So, what are you going to do about it? What can I do? I humiliated one of the most powerful women in the city. She's probably already filed a complaint with Internal Affairs. Have you checked? Riley shook her head. I'm afraid to. Riley, you need to face this head on. If you made a mistake, own it. That's what separates good cops from bad ones. Across town, in a glass high-rise in the Apex district, Vivian Sterling stood in her corner office, staring over the sprawl below. She hadn't slept well either, though not for the same reasons. The encounter had left her unsettled in a way she couldn't name. As the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, she was used to control, deference, measured words, doors opened before she reached them. Officer Carter had given her none of that, suspicion, authority, then dismissal. It should have only made her furious. It did. And yet something else kept tugging at her attention as she tried to focus on the quarterly reports scattered across her mahogany desk. Her assistant, Ethan, knocked and slipped in with practiced efficiency. Ms. Sterling, your 11 a.m. is here, and legal is standing by regarding last night's incident. Vivian turned from the window. Cancel legal, Ethan. Ma'am? I said cancel them. I won't be filing a complaint. Ethan blinked, confused, then nodded. Of course. Anything else you need regarding the incident? Vivian hesitated, then picked up the morning paper. The business front showed her from last week's charity gala. Sterling Industries reports record profits. She set it down and looked back at the city. What do you know about the LAPD's community outreach programs? I'm sorry? Police community relations. Do we partner with local law enforcement? We contribute to several benevolent funds, and we've sponsored youth programs before. Why? I want you to research Officer Riley Carter. Background, record, commendations. Discreetly, Ms. Sterling. If this is about retaliation, I'm not planning retaliation, Ethan. I'm planning something else entirely. Back at the coffee shop, Riley's phone buzzed. Her sergeant's name lit the screen and her stomach dropped. Carter. Riley, my office. 1 hour. Sarge, about last night, we'll discuss it here. The line clicked off. Riley looked at Marco, dread settling. Sergeant Luis Ramirez, she said. I've been called in. It'll be okay, Marco said. You're a good cop who made a mistake. That's not the end of the world. Still, on the drive to the station, she couldn't shake the sense that her night with Vivian Sterling wasn't finished. There'd been something in Vivian's eyes as she pulled away, not just anger. Curiosity. An hour later, Riley sat in Sergeant Luis Ramirez's office, hands folded in her lap, bracing for the reprimand. Ramirez, fair, tough, a supervisor she respected, didn't waste words. Tell me about last night. Riley laid it out exactly, no excuses and no spin. When she finished, Ramirez leaned back, studying her. You know you screwed up. Yes, sir. You know Vivian Sterling could have your badge if she wanted. Yes, sir. You know this could have ended your career. Riley nodded, throat tight. Ramirez was silent a long beat. She's not filing a complaint. Riley's head snapped up. She's not? No. In fact, her office called to say that while she's disappointed in how it was handled, she understands the job's hard and mistakes happen. Relief tangled with confusion in Riley's chest. I don't understand. Why would she do that? I don't know, Carter. What I do know is you're getting a second chance you don't deserve. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. There's one more thing. M. Sterling's office has requested a meeting with you. Riley's blood ran cold. A meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. at her office in Apex District. She wants to discuss community relations between Sterling Industries and the LAPD. Sarge, I don't think it's not a request, Carter. It's an order. You're going to that meeting. You're going to be professional and you're going to represent this department with dignity. Understood? Understood. As Riley left the station, her mind raced with questions. Why hadn't Vivian filed a complaint? Why did she want to meet? And why did Riley feel both terrified and strangely excited about seeing her again? The rain had stopped and the Crestmont City sun was shining brightly. But Riley couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was just beginning. Riley stood in the marble lobby of the Sterling Industries building, feeling completely out of place in her dress uniform. The 40-story tower in Apex District was a monument to corporate power with its gleaming surfaces and expensive art installations. She had arrived 15 minutes early, partly out of nervousness, and partly because she wanted to observe the environment before facing Vivian again. The lobby bustled with well-dressed executives and assistants, all moving with the purposeful efficiency of people who understood their place in the corporate hierarchy. Riley watched them, noting how they carried themselves with confidence and authority, much like Vivian had, even while standing in the rain, being questioned by a police officer. Officer Carter. A young man in an impeccably tailored suit approached her. I'm Ethan Clark, Miss Sterling's executive assistant. She's ready to see you now. Riley followed Ethan to a private elevator that required a key card to access. As they rose through the floors, Riley tried to calm her nerves and remember Sergeant Luis Ramirez's words about professionalism and dignity. The elevator opened directly into Vivian's office suite, and Riley was immediately struck by the space's understated elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Crestmont City from the Pacific Ocean to the San Gabriel Mountains. The office was decorated in neutral tones with carefully selected modern art, and everything spoke of wealth and power exercised with restraint. Vivian stood behind her desk wearing a charcoal gray business suit that probably cost more than Riley made in a month. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she wore minimal jewelry, just a simple watch and small diamond earrings. She looked every inch the successful CEO. But Riley noticed something different in her posture. Where there had been anger and indignation 2 nights ago, now there seemed to be curiosity and careful assessment. Officer Carter, thank you for coming. Vivian's voice was professional, but not cold. Please have a seat. Riley sat in one of the leather chairs facing Vivian's desk, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. M. Sterling, I want to start by apologizing for the other night. My conduct was unprofessional, and you deserved better treatment. Vivian studied Riley for a moment before responding. I appreciate the apology, Officer Carter, but I didn't ask you here to relitigate what happened. Then why did you ask me here? Vivian walked around her desk and sat in the chair next to Riley rather than behind the imposing desk. The gesture was subtle but significant. It changed the dynamic from adversarial to conversational. I've been thinking about our encounter, Vivian said. And I realized something interesting. In my position, I'm surrounded by people who tell me what they think I want to hear. Employees, business partners, even friends. They all measure their words carefully around me. But you didn't do that. Riley frowned, unsure where this was leading. I was doing my job. Were you? Or were you doing what you thought was right regardless of who I was? Riley paused, considering the question. I was trying to do what I thought was right, but I was wrong about the situation. Maybe. But you weren't wrong about treating everyone equally under the law. That's what you said, isn't it? That you don't care who someone is? Riley nodded slowly. Yes, Bunobu. That's exactly what you should have said. The problem wasn't your principle, Officer Carter. The problem was your execution. Vivian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Do you know what I do here, Officer Carter? You run a corporation. I make decisions that affect thousands of people's lives. I decide which projects get funded, which employees get promoted, which communities receive our charitable contributions. And every day, people try to influence those decisions by telling me what they think I want to hear. Vivian turned back to face Riley. But you didn't do that. Even when you realized who I was, you didn't back down or change your approach. You stuck to your principles even when it was clearly not in your best interest to do so. Riley felt confused and slightly defensive. Miss Sterling, I'm not sure what you're getting at. I'm getting at the fact that I find your integrity refreshing, even if your judgment was questionable. Vivian returned to her seat and leaned forward slightly. I've been researching you, Officer Carter. 5 years with the LAPD, commendations for bravery and community service, a spotless record until 2 nights ago. You grew up in East Crest, worked your way through college, and joined the force because you wanted to make a difference. Riley shifted uncomfortably. You had me investigated. I had you researched. There's a difference. I wanted to understand who you are beyond our unfortunate first meeting. And what did you conclude? Vivian smiled for the first time since Riley had arrived, and it transformed her entire face. I concluded that you're exactly the kind of person I want to work with. Work with Sterling Industries is launching a new community outreach initiative. We want to partner with local law enforcement to improve police-community relations, particularly in underserved neighborhoods. I'd like you to be our liaison with the LAPD. Riley stared at Vivian in shock. You want me to work for you? With me? Not for me. You'd remain a police officer, but you'd also serve as a consultant on our community programs. It would mean additional income, flexible hours, and the opportunity to make a real difference in the community. I don't understand. 2 nights ago, I humiliated you. Why would you want to work with me? Vivian was quiet for a moment, and Riley could see her choosing her words carefully. Because you showed me something I rarely see. Someone who isn't afraid to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's difficult. That's exactly the kind of integrity we need for this program. Riley felt overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events. Miss Sterling, I need to think about this, of course. But I hope you'll consider it seriously. This program could help bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities you serve. Isn't that why you became a police officer? Riley nodded slowly. Yes, it is. Then think about it. We could start small. Maybe some community forums, youth programs, training initiatives, but with the right approach, we could make a real impact. Vivian stood and walked back to her desk, pulling out a folder. I've prepared some preliminary information about the program. Take it with you, review it, and let me know what you think. Riley took the folder, still reeling from how the conversation had turned. Miss Sterling, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you file a complaint? You had every right. Vivian considered. Because I believe in second chances, Officer Carter, and because our encounter, unpleasant as it was, showed me something important about your character. What's that? That you're willing to do what you think is right even when it's hard. That's rare, and exactly what this program needs. When Riley stood to go, Vivian walked her to the elevator. Officer Carter, I hope you'll seriously consider this. I think we can do something meaningful together. Riley looked at her, seeing someone very different from the woman she'd imagined 2 nights earlier. The anger and embarrassment were gone, replaced by a sense of mutual respect, and maybe the start of understanding. I'll review everything and get back to you within a week, Riley said. That's all I can ask. As the door slid shut, Vivian's words stayed with her. The woman she'd met tonight wasn't the entitled figure Riley had assumed. This Vivian was thoughtful, principled, genuinely intent on doing good. Still, Riley couldn't shake the sense that the offer carried more than simple outreach. There'd been something in Vivian's eyes that suggested it wasn't just business. Driving home, Riley knew her life had veered onto an unexpected path. The only question was whether she was brave enough to follow it. 2 weeks later, Riley was back at Sterling Industries, this time as a consultant, not a visitor. After careful thought and a conversation with Sergeant Luis Ramirez, she had accepted Vivian's proposal to serve as liaison for the community outreach program. The conference room on the 35th floor was packed with Sterling executives, LAPD representatives, and community leaders from across Crestmont City. Riley sat at the long mahogany table, still getting used to a space where million-dollar decisions were made with casual ease. At the front, Vivian commanded the room with unforced authority, laying out the initial framework for what they were calling the Community Bridge Initiative. She wore a navy blue suit that complemented her dark hair, and Riley found herself admiring the way Vivian could shift seamlessly between discussing budget allocations and community needs. The goal, Vivian was saying, is to create sustainable programs that address the root causes of police-community tension while building genuine relationships between law enforcement and the neighborhoods they serve. Captain Javier Ortiz, Riley's district commander, leaned forward. "Miss Sterling, this sounds ambitious. What kind of timeline are we looking at?" "We're proposing a phased approach," Vivian replied, clicking to the next slide of her presentation. Phase 1 would involve community listening sessions in 3 pilot neighborhoods. Officer Carter would facilitate these sessions, working with local community leaders to identify specific concerns and opportunities. Riley felt all eyes turn to her and she straightened in her chair. "The key is building trust," she said, finding her voice. "Many communities have had negative experiences with law enforcement. We need to show up consistently, listen without being defensive, and follow through on our commitments." Lucia Reyes, a community organizer from Arroyo Heights, nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what we need to hear. Too many programs come into our neighborhoods with good intentions, but no real understanding of our challenges." Vivian looked at Riley with something that might have been pride. "That's why Officer Carter is so valuable to this initiative. She understands both sides of the equation." Over the next hour, they discussed specifics, budget allocations, staffing requirements, success metrics, and potential obstacles. Riley was impressed by Vivian's grasp of the details and her willingness to commit significant resources to the program. After the meeting, as the participants filed out, Vivian approached Riley. "Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to discuss the next steps." They walked to Vivian's office and Riley noticed that Vivian seemed more relaxed than she had during their previous meetings. There was an ease in her manner that suggested she was becoming comfortable with Riley's presence. "That went well," Vivian said, settling into her chair. "You handled the questions about community engagement perfectly." "Thank you. I have to admit I was nervous about speaking up in a room full of executives and officials." Vivian smiled. "You shouldn't be. Your perspective is exactly what this program needs. You bring credibility that I could never have on my own." Riley studied Vivian's face, noting the genuine warmth in her expression. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why is this program so important to you?" "I mean, Sterling Industries could spend this money on a dozen other initiatives that would generate more positive publicity." Vivian was quiet for a moment, and Riley could see her considering how much to reveal. "My father built this company from nothing," she finally said. "He grew up in a neighborhood not unlike the ones we're trying to help. He always said that success meant nothing if you didn't use it to lift others up. He sounds like a wise man." "He was. He died 5 years ago, and I've been trying to honor his memory by making sure Sterling Industries does more than churn out profits." Riley felt a flicker of understanding. "So this is personal for you." "Everything I do is personal, Officer Carter. I don't believe in half measures or token gestures. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Vivian rose and crossed to a bookshelf, pulling down a thick binder. "I've been developing additional ideas: youth mentorship, job training partnerships, even a scholarship fund for kids pursuing law enforcement or community service." Riley took the binder, impressed by the detail. "You've really thought this through." "I have, but I need your help to make it work. You understand the communities we're trying to reach in ways I never will." As Riley turned the pages, the depth of Vivian's research hit her. This wasn't a vanity project or PR gloss. It was a serious, well-funded plan aimed at real problems. "Vivian," Riley paused, realizing it was the first time she'd used her first name. Vivian noticed too. Her expression softened. "This is incredible," Riley said, "but are you sure you want me as your partner?" Our first meeting wasn't exactly promising. Vivian laughed, warm and unguarded. Riley, our first meeting is exactly why I want you. You weren't afraid to challenge authority when you thought it was necessary. That's the kind of courage this needs. Something shifted between them, subtle but unmistakable. The formal distance thinned, replaced by the beginnings of a true partnership. Okay, Riley said. Let's do it. But I have one condition. What is it? If I'm your partner, you have to promise to be honest about what works and what doesn't. I won't be part of something that looks good on paper and doesn't help anyone. Vivian extended her hand. You have my word. They shook, and a current passed through Riley that had nothing to do with business. Vivian's hand was warm and soft, her grip firm and sure. They held on a fraction too long, and something in Vivian's eyes made Riley's pulse jump. I should go, Riley said, suddenly aware of the charged air. Of course. But, Riley? Riley turned at the door. Yes? I'm glad you chose to work with me. I think we'll accomplish something special. Walking out, Riley couldn't shake the sense that Vivian was right, and that it might be about more than outreach. The following week, they launched their first community listening session in East Crest, not far from where Riley grew up. They set up in St. Mary's Catholic Church's community center, a modest space that had served the neighborhood for decades. Riley watched Vivian move through the room, listening closely, asking careful questions, taking in every concern as if it mattered, because it did. There was no condescension in her manner, no sense that she was slumbing it for a good cause. She treated everyone with the same respect and attention she would give to a board of directors. Officer Carter, said Mrs. Delgado, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. Is this lady for real, or is this just another photo opportunity? Riley looked at Vivian, who was crouched down talking to a group of children about their dreams for the future. She's for real, Mrs. Delgado. I've seen her work, and she doesn't do anything halfway. Good. Because we've been promised a lot of things over the years, and most of them never happened. This will be different, Riley said, and she realized she truly believed it. As the evening progressed, Riley found herself watching Vivian with growing admiration. The woman who had seemed so imperious during their first encounter was revealing herself to be compassionate, intelligent, and genuinely committed to making a difference. When the session ended and they were packing up their materials, Vivian approached Riley with a tired but satisfied smile. How do you think it went? Vivian asked. Better than I expected. You were different than I thought you'd be. Different how? Riley considered her words carefully. More real, more human. Vivian laughed. As opposed to what? A corporate robot? Something like that. They walked to their cars in comfortable silence, and Riley realized that somewhere between their disastrous first meeting and tonight, her opinion of Vivian Sterling had completely changed. The woman she was getting to know was nothing like the entitled rich person she had imagined. Riley, Vivian said as they reached their cars. Would you like to get dinner? I know a quiet place where we could debrief about tonight. Riley hesitated, aware that accepting would cross a line from professional to personal. But looking at Vivian in the parking lot light, she found herself nodding. I'd like that. As they drove to the restaurant, Riley couldn't help but wonder what she was getting herself into. But for the first time in years, she was excited to find out. The restaurant Vivian chose was a small Italian place in Santa Monica. Far from the corporate towers and police stations that defined their professional lives, it was intimate without being romantic. With soft lighting and quiet conversation that allowed them to talk without being overheard. Riley felt underdressed in her jeans and blazer compared to Vivian's elegant business attire. But Vivian seemed completely at ease, having shed the formal demeanor she wore in boardrooms and community meetings. I have to admit, Vivian said as they settled into their booth. I wasn't sure you'd say yes to dinner. I wasn't sure I would either, Riley replied honestly. This is complicated because we're working together because 3 weeks ago I humiliated you in a parking lot and now we're having dinner like old friends. Vivian smiled and Riley was struck again by how it transformed her entire face. Maybe that's exactly why this works. We've already seen each other at our worst. The waiter approached and Vivian ordered a bottle of wine without consulting Riley. I hope you don't mind. After tonight's session, I think we both deserve a drink. I don't usually drink when I'm carrying, Riley said, instinctively touching her service weapon. Are you on duty? No, but then you're not a police officer right now. You're just Riley having dinner with Vivian. Riley considered this, then nodded to the waiter. One glass. As they waited for their food, Vivian leaned forward slightly. Tell me about growing up in East Crest. What was it like? Riley was surprised by the personal question. Why do you want to know? Because I want to understand you. Tonight, watching you with the community members, I could see that you really get it. You understand their struggles in a way that I never could. Riley took a sip of wine, feeling its warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't easy. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat after my dad left. I saw a lot of kids in my neighborhood get caught up in gangs or drugs because they didn't see any other options. Is that why you became a police officer? Partly. I wanted to be the kind of cop I wished we'd had in my neighborhood. Someone who actually cared about the community, not just about making arrests. Vivian nodded thoughtfully. And have you been able to be that kind of cop? Riley considered the question. Most of the time. But the system makes it hard. There's pressure to meet quotas, to be tough on crime, to see every situation as us versus them. Is that what happened the night we met? Riley felt her cheeks flush. Honestly, I think I was having a bad week and I took it out on you. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. What kind of bad week? Riley hesitated, then decided to be honest. I'd just been passed over for a promotion that I'd been working toward for 2 years. They gave it to a guy with half my experience but better political connections. I was feeling frustrated with the whole system. Vivian's expression softened. I'm sorry. That must have been disappointing. It was. And when I saw you in that expensive car, I think I projected all my frustration about inequality and privilege onto you. That wasn't fair. No, it wasn't. But I understand it. Their food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Riley found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. There was something about Vivian's presence that was both calming and energizing. Can I ask you something? Riley said. Of course. What's it like being one of the most powerful women in the city? Do you ever feel isolated? Vivian set down her fork and considered the question. Every day when you're in my position, it's hard to know who your real friends are. People want things from you. Access, money, influence. It becomes difficult to trust anyone's motives. That sounds lonely. It is. I have colleagues and business associates, but very few real friends. Most people are either intimidated by my position or trying to use it for their own benefit. Riley studied Vivian's face, seeing vulnerability beneath the confident exterior. Is that why you didn't file a complaint against me? Because I treated you like a regular person. Vivian laughed. You treated me like a suspected criminal. But yes, in a strange way, it was refreshing. You weren't trying to impress me or get something from me. You were just doing your job. Even if you were doing it badly. Thanks for that. I'm serious, Riley. Do you know how rare it is for someone to challenge me the way you did? Most people in my life are so careful around me that I never get honest feedback about anything. Riley felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. Well, if you want honest feedback, I can definitely provide that. I'm counting on it. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed easily from professional topics to personal stories. Riley learned that Vivian had earned her MBA from Stanford, that she spoke 3 languages, and that she had a secret passion for old movies. Vivian discovered that Riley had been a literature major in college, that she wrote poetry in her spare time, and that she had never been outside of California. Never? Vivian asked, incredulous. Not even to Vegas? Never had the money or the time. Police work doesn't exactly come with generous vacation packages. That's a shame. There's so much to see in the world. Maybe someday, Riley said, though she couldn't imagine when that someday might come. Vivian was quiet for a moment, and Riley could see her thinking about something. Riley, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you seeing anyone? The question caught Riley off guard. No. Why? Just curious. Someone like you. Intelligent, dedicated, attractive. I would have thought you'd be taken. Riley felt her pulse quicken at the word attractive. I don't have much time for dating. The job keeps me pretty busy. That's a shame. There was something in Vivian's tone that made Riley look at her more closely. What about you? I'm sure you have men lining up to date you. Vivian smiled, but there was something enigmatic about it. I'm very particular about who I spend my time with. The waiter brought the check and Vivian insisted on paying despite Riley's protests. As they walked to their cars, Riley felt reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you for dinner, Riley said. And for this. I haven't had a conversation like that in a long time. Neither have I, Vivian replied. Riley, I hope this won't be the last time we do this. What do you mean? Vivian stepped closer and Riley could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made her head spin slightly. I mean, I'd like to get to know you better outside of work. Riley felt her heart racing. Vivian, I'm not sure that's a good idea. We're working together and in what? We're both adults. We're both single and I think there's something here worth exploring. Riley looked into Vivian's eyes and saw something that made her breath catch. There was desire there, but also something deeper. Genuine affection and respect. I need to think about this, Riley said. Of course, but Riley. Yes. Vivian leaned in and kissed Riley's cheek, her lips lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. Don't overthink it. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. As Vivian drove away, Riley stood in the parking lot, her hand touching the spot where Vivian's lips had been. She knew she was standing at a crossroads, and whatever decision she made would change everything. But as she drove home through the quiet Crestmont city streets, Riley realized that her decision had already been made. She was falling for Vivian Sterling, and there was no going back. 3 days after their dinner, Riley found herself standing outside Vivian's Laurel Heights mansion, holding a bottle of wine and questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. Vivian had invited her over for a working dinner to review the community program proposals, but Riley suspected there would be very little work involved. The house was exactly what Riley had expected. The villa sprawled in Mediterranean style, ringed by perfectly kept gardens and a circular drive wide enough for a dozen cars. Riley had only seen places like this in films, and she felt out of place as she pressed the doorbell. Vivian opened it herself, jeans, a simple white blouse that somehow looked more elegant than most people's evening wear. Her hair was loose, soft waves framing her shoulders. She looked younger, more at ease than Riley had ever seen. You found it, Vivian said with a small smile. Come in. Riley followed her through a marble foyer into a living room that balanced luxury with comfort. The furniture was high-end but welcoming, and the walls were lined with books and original art that felt chosen, not staged. This is beautiful, Riley said, taking it in. Thank you. It's a bit much, I know, but it's home. Can I get you something to drink? Riley lifted the bottle she'd brought. I brought this, though I'm not sure it's your level. Vivian turned the label in her hand. It's perfect. I'll open it, make yourself comfortable. While Vivian disappeared into the kitchen, Riley wandered, studying the photographs on the mantel. Shots of Vivian with dignitaries and celebrities. Yes, but also intimate moments. Vivian with an older man Riley assumed was her father. A graduation photo, a candid laugh with friends at what looked like a casual party. That's my father, Vivian said, returning with 2 glasses and catching Riley's glance. You look like him. Everyone says that. He was remarkable, built this company from nothing and never forgot where he came from. She passed Riley a glass and took the sofa, patting the cushion beside her. Riley sat, acutely aware of the closeness, and of Vivian's perfume, light and warm, settling in the space between them. So, Vivian said, how are the community sessions going? Really well. Better than I expected. People are showing up and actually engaging. That's because they trust you. You've got credibility money can't buy. Riley sipped, feeling the wine's warmth spread. Vivian, can I ask you something? Always. Why me? Truly. You could have picked any officer in the city. Why choose the one who humiliated you? Vivian swirled her glass, thinking. Do you want the professional answer or the personal one? Both. Professionally, you're exactly what this program needs. Your colleagues respect you, you understand the neighborhoods we're trying to reach, and you're not afraid to speak truth to power. She held Riley's gaze, something unreadable, and charged, there. Personally, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night in the rain. Riley's breath hitched. I know it's complicated, Vivian went on. There are a dozen reasons this is a bad idea. But, Riley, I haven't felt like this in years. Riley set her glass down, hands unsteady. What way? Vivian shifted closer on the sofa, enough that Riley could feel her warmth. Intrigued. Challenged. Attracted. We work together. We're partners on a community program, Riley said, as if reminding them both. That isn't the same as working together, Vivian replied. It's still complicated. Vivian reached for her hand, a light touch. The best things usually are. Riley looked down at their joined hands, noting how perfectly Vivian's fingers fit between hers. I don't usually date women. Riley nodded, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Neither do I, Vivian said softly. But there's something about you, Riley. Something that makes me want to break all my own rules. Riley looked up into Vivian's eyes and saw her own confusion and desire reflected there. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. Vivian leaned closer, and Riley could feel her heart pounding as Vivian's lips brushed against hers in the softest of kisses. It was gentle and questioning, giving Riley the opportunity to pull away if she wanted to. But Riley didn't want to pull away. Instead, she found herself kissing Vivian back, her hand coming up to cup Vivian's face as the kiss deepened when they finally broke apart. Both women were breathing heavily. Wow, Riley whispered. Yeah, Vivian agreed. Wow. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. Riley, Vivian said finally. I need you to know that this doesn't change anything about our work together. The community program is important to me regardless of what happens between us personally. I know. But Vivian, I need to be honest with you. I'm scared. Of what? Of this? Of you? Of how you make me feel? Vivian took Riley's hand again. How do I make you feel? Riley struggled to find the words. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and I don't know if I'm about to fall or fly. Vivian smiled. That's exactly how I feel, too. They talked for hours, sharing stories and fears and dreams that they had never told anyone else. Riley learned that Vivian had always felt pressure to be perfect, to live up to her father's legacy, and the expectations that came with her position. Vivian discovered that Riley had always felt like an outsider, never quite fitting in anywhere, but determined to make a difference. Anyway, as the evening wore on, they moved closer together on the couch, their conversation becoming more intimate and personal. Riley found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, feeling safe and understood in Vivian's presence. I should go, Riley said finally, noticing that it was nearly midnight. You could stay, Vivian said softly. I have plenty of guest rooms. Riley looked at Vivian, seeing the invitation in her eyes and knowing that if she stayed, there would be no going back. I don't think that's a good idea. Not yet. Vivian nodded, though Riley could see disappointment in her expression. I understand, but Riley. Yes, this isn't going away. What's happening between us, it's real, and it's not going to disappear just because we're scared of it. Riley stood up, feeling unsteady on her feet. I know. I just need some time to process all of this. Vivian walked her to the door and they stood in the foyer for a moment, neither wanting to say goodbye. Can I see you again outside of work? Vivian asked. Riley nodded. I'd like that. Vivian leaned in and kissed Riley again, this time with more confidence and passion. When they broke apart, Riley felt dizzy with desire and confusion. Good night, Riley. Good night, Vivian. As Riley drove home through the empty streets of Laurel Heights, she knew that her life had just changed irrevocably. She was falling in love with Vivian Sterling, and there was no going back to the way things were before. The question was whether she was brave enough to see where this path would lead. 6 months later, Riley stood in the same community center in East Crest where she and Vivian had held their first listening session. But tonight was different. Tonight was the celebration of the Community Bridge Initiative's first major success. The opening of 3 new youth centers, a job training program that had already placed 47 people in stable employment, and a police community dialogue program that was being studied by departments across the country. The room was packed with community members, police officers, city officials, and Sterling Industries employees. Riley watched Vivian work the room with her characteristic grace, stopping to talk with everyone from the mayor to Mrs. Delgado, the elderly woman who had questioned Vivian's sincerity at that first meeting. You did good, mija, said Detective Marco Alvarez, appearing at Riley's side with a cup of coffee. This program has changed everything in these neighborhoods. Riley smiled, but her attention remained on Vivian, who was crouched down talking to a group of children from the new after-school program. We did good. This was a team effort. Come on, Riley. Everyone knows this happened because of the partnership between you and Vivian Sterling. The question is, what else is happening between you two? Riley felt her cheeks warm. Over the past 6 months, she and Vivian had been careful to keep their growing personal relationship separate from their professional collaboration. But Riley knew that people were starting to notice the way they looked at each other. The easy intimacy of their conversations, the fact that they spent more and more time together outside of work. It's complicated, Marco. The best relationships usually are. Before Riley could respond, Vivian approached them, her face glowing with satisfaction and pride. Detective Alvarez, Vivian said, extending her hand to Marco. Thank you for all your support with this program. The department's cooperation has been essential to our success. Thank you, Ms. Sterling. This initiative has made my job a lot easier. When the community trusts the police, everyone benefits. Vivian turned to Riley, and for a moment, their eyes met with an intensity that made Riley's pulse quicken. Riley, could I steal you away for a few minutes? There's something I'd like to show you. Riley followed Vivian outside to the parking lot where the Crestmont city skyline glittered in the distance. The night air was cool and clear, a stark contrast to the rainy evening when they had first met. What did you want to show me? Riley asked. Vivian smiled and pulled out her phone, scrolling to a news article. This. Riley read the headline. Sterling Industries Community Program becomes national model for police reform. The article detailed how their initiative was being replicated in cities across the country, with Vivian and Riley being invited to speak at conferences and consult with other organizations. This is incredible. Riley said, we're actually making a difference. We are. But Riley, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Vivian's tone had shifted, becoming more serious, and Riley felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. What is it? Vivian took Riley's hands in hers, a gesture that had become natural over the months they had been together. I've been offered a position in Washington. The Department of Justice wants me to head up a new national initiative for police community relations. Riley felt her heart sink. That's amazing, Vivian. It's exactly the kind of opportunity you deserve. I haven't accepted it yet. Why not? Vivian stepped closer and Riley could see vulnerability in her eyes. Because I don't want to leave you. Because what we've built together, both professionally and personally, means more to me than any career opportunity. Riley felt tears prick at her eyes. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had deepened in ways she had never expected. What had started as attraction and curiosity had grown into something profound and transformative. Vivian had shown her a world beyond her small apartment and patrol car, while Riley had grounded Vivian in a sense of purpose and authenticity she had never experienced. Vivian, you can't turn down an opportunity like this because of me. I'm not turning it down because of you. I'm turning it down for us, for what we've built together. Riley shook her head. That's not fair to either of us. This is your chance to make a national impact, to take everything we've learned here and apply it on a massive scale. Vivian cupped Riley's face in her hands. And what about us? What about what we have? Riley leaned into Vivian's touch, feeling the familiar warmth and comfort of her presence. What we have is strong enough to survive anything. But Vivian, if you don't take this opportunity, you'll always wonder what might have been. And eventually you'll resent me for it. I could never resent you. Maybe not consciously, but this is your calling, Vivian. This is what you're meant to do. Vivian was quiet for a long moment, and Riley could see her struggling with the decision. Come with me. What? Come to Washington with me. The Justice Department is looking for experienced officers to help implement these programs. You could transfer to the DC Metro Police or work directly with the federal program. We could do this together. Riley felt her heart racing. The idea of leaving Crestmont City, of starting over in a new city with Vivian, was both terrifying and exhilarating. Vivian, I can't just uproot my entire life. Why not? What's keeping you here? Riley thought about the question. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago, and she had no other family in Crestmont City. Her friends were mostly fellow officers who would understand her need to pursue new opportunities. The truth was there wasn't much keeping her in LA except fear of change. I'm scared, Riley admitted. Of what? Of leaving everything I know. Of taking such a big step. Of what happens if this doesn't work out between us. Vivian pulled Riley into her arms, holding her close. Riley, 6 months ago, you were brave enough to challenge me in a parking lot when you thought I was breaking the law. You were brave enough to accept my offer to work together despite our rocky start. You were brave enough to let yourself fall in love with someone you never expected to care about. Don't let fear stop you now. Riley buried her face in Vivian's shoulder, breathing in her familiar scent and feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. What if I'm not good enough for Washington? What if I can't handle working at that level? Vivian pulled back and looked directly into Riley's eyes. Riley Carter, you are the most capable, principled, and courageous person I know. You've already proven that you can work at any level. The question is whether you're willing to take the leap. Riley thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The rainy night encounter that had started it all, the gradual building of trust and respect. The community programs that had exceeded everyone's expectations and the love that had grown between them despite all the obstacles. If I say yes, Riley said slowly. What happens next? Vivian smiled, and Riley could see hope and excitement in her eyes. Next, we change the world together. Riley looked around at the community center, at the neighborhood where she had grown up, at the city that had shaped her into the person she was today. Then she looked back at Vivian, at the woman who had challenged her to be better, to think bigger, to believe in possibilities she had never imagined. Okay, Riley said. Let's do it. Vivian's face lit up with joy, and she spun Riley around in the parking lot, both of them laughing with the pure happiness of two people who had found their path forward together. I love you, Vivian said as she set Riley down. I love you too, Riley replied. And she meant it with every fiber of her being. As they walked back into the community center hand in hand, Riley reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had started with humiliation and misunderstanding had transformed into partnership, respect, and ultimately love. They had both been changed by their encounter. Vivian had found authenticity and purpose. While Riley had discovered courage and possibility, the celebration continued around them. But Riley and Vivian only had eyes for each other. They had work to do, a country to help heal, and a future to build together. And as Riley looked at Vivian, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as partners in every sense of the word. 6 months ago, Riley had been a police officer who thought she knew exactly what her life would look like. Tonight, she was a woman in love, preparing to embark on an adventure that would take her far from everything she had known. But she wasn't afraid anymore. With Vivian by her side, she was ready for anything. The rain had stopped long ago, but the storm had brought them together. And now, under the clear Crestmont City sky, they were ready to chase the dawn point 2 years later. Riley stood in the rose garden of the White House, wearing her dress uniform and watching as Vivian addressed a gathering of police chiefs, community leaders, and federal officials. The National Community Bridge Initiative had become one of the most successful police reform programs in American history, and Vivian was being honored for her leadership and vision. Riley caught Vivian's eye during the speech and saw her smile, the same smile that had first captivated her in that Laurel Heights mansion. They had built something beautiful together, both professionally and personally. Their love had not only survived the transition to Washington, but had grown stronger as they worked side by side to heal the divide between law enforcement and the communities they served. As Vivian concluded her remarks and the crowd applauded, Riley felt a deep sense of satisfaction and gratitude. What had started as the worst night of her career had become the beginning of the best chapter of her life. Sometimes, Riley thought, the most beautiful stories begin with the most unlikely encounters, and sometimes what looks like an ending is really just the beginning of something extraordinary. Poor favor continue expert logo prime. 3 years later, Crestmont City. Riley stood once again in the parking lot of that same 24-hour diner on Solstice Boulevard. But this time, she wasn't alone. Vivian was beside her, both of them looking at the spot where their lives had first intersected on that rainy night that now seemed like a lifetime ago. Hard to believe it all started here, Vivian said, taking Riley's hand. With me being a complete ass, Riley added with a rueful smile. With both of us being stubborn and proud, Vivian corrected. But maybe that's exactly what we needed to be. They were back in Crestmont City for the dedication of the Riley Carter Community Justice Center, a new facility in East Crest that would serve as a model for community police collaboration. The center bore Riley's name at Vivian's insistence, though Riley had protested that the honor should go to Vivian, or the community members who had made it all possible. You were the bridge, Vivian had argued. You made it possible for people like me to understand what communities really need. Your name belongs on this building. The dedication ceremony had been emotional with speeches from community leaders, police officials, and even the mayor. Mrs. Delgado. now 75 and still sharp as ever, had cut the ribbon with tears in her eyes. "Mija," she had whispered to Riley afterward. "You kept your promise. You really did make things different." Now, as they stood in the parking lot where it all began, Riley reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The National Community Bridge Initiative had been implemented in over 200 cities, reducing police community tensions and creating lasting change in neighborhoods across America. Riley had been promoted to deputy director of the program, working alongside Vivian to train officers and community leaders in the principles they had developed together. But more than their professional success, Riley treasured what they had built personally. Their relationship had weathered the challenges of public scrutiny, career pressures, and the constant travel their work required. They had learned to support each other's ambitions while building a life together that neither had imagined possible. "Riley," Vivian said, turning to face her with an expression that was both nervous and excited. "What is it?" Vivian reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Riley's breath caught as Vivian dropped to one knee right there in the parking lot under the same neon lights that had illuminated their first encounter. "Riley Carter," Vivian said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. 3 years ago, you challenged me to be better than I was. You showed me what real courage looks like, what authentic leadership means, and what it feels like to love someone completely. You've made me a better person, a better leader, and a better woman." Riley felt tears streaming down her face as Vivian opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Riley looked down at Vivian, this incredible woman who had transformed her life in ways she was still discovering. She thought about the scared, angry police officer she had been that rainy night, and the confident, purposeful woman she had become. She thought about all the communities they had helped, all the bridges they had built, all the love they had shared. "Yes," Riley whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course. Yes." Vivian slipped the ring onto Riley's finger and stood up, pulling her into a kiss that was witnessed only by the neon lights and the distant hum of Crestmont city traffic. It was perfect in its simplicity, just like their love had been. Unexpected, transformative, and absolutely right. As they held each other in the parking lot, Riley couldn't help but laugh at the beautiful irony of it all. The worst professional moment of her life had led to the best personal moment. The night she had thought would end her career had actually been the beginning of everything she had ever wanted. "I love you," Riley said against Vivian's lips. "I love you, too," Vivian replied. "And I can't wait to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." They drove home together, through the familiar streets of Crestmont City. Past the neighborhoods where they had first worked together. Past the community centers that bore witness to their success. Past the places that had shaped them both into the women they had become. At a red light, Riley looked at the ring on her finger, and then at Vivian, who was humming softly as she drove. The light turned green and they continued forward into their future. Two women who had found love in the most unexpected place and built something beautiful from the ashes of their pride. Behind them, the neon sign of the 24-hour diner flickered in the night. A quiet witness to the start of a love story that reshaped not only two lives but whole neighborhoods across the country. Somewhere farther off, the first beads of new rain began to fall, rinsing the city and readying it for whatever tales the night would carry. But Riley and Vivian were no longer strangers crossing paths in a storm. They were partners, lovers, and soon-to-be wives, steering home through the city they'd helped mend, prepared to face whatever trials and adventures awaited. The same rain that once drew them together now anointed their engagement. And as they turned into their driveway, Riley understood that some tempests are meant to be braved as one, and some encounters are meant to alter everything. Their story had opened with humiliation and misread intentions. It would continue with love, true partnership, and the steady conviction that two people devoted to justice, and to each other, could indeed change the world. By morning, they would wake engaged, ready to plan not just a wedding but a lifetime of building bridges, tending to communities, and proving that love can conquer even the pride and prejudice that once stood between them. The circle had closed, and yet their story was only beginning.